There are a lot of screenwriting myths out there, things that people think are true that are really not true about screenwriting. And we're going to try to dispel some of those today. Thank you for liking, subscribing. I do appreciate it. Let's jump in. There are a lot of myths associated with screenwriting about thinking it's one thing and it's really something else. So we're going to try to deal with those. The first one of those is that screenwriting isn't hard. Well, screenwriting actually is very hard. But one of the things that happens is when people make this comment, a lot of times they're comparing screenwriting to other mediums, forms of writing in other mediums. So, writing a novel or writing a short story. And each of those are also hard. The difference is when you write a novel, you are writing the end piece. Like what you write is what people will read. When you write a short story, that's what people will read. So it makes it hard. You got to get it just right. You're the only one doing it. You got to get it just right. A screenplay, though, you write the screenplay and then somebody gets it. Maybe they rewrite you. They make a movie. It gets redone in editing. So you can kind of get away with a little more. So it's not as hard. And that's really where that comes from. And it's actually very hard. Writing is a craft. It takes practice. It takes time to get good at it. And you have to be willing to invest the time. It's hard. And if anybody tries to tell you screenwriting is easy, it's not easy. There are a lot of things that you kind of have to pay attention to. There's some rules and there's some guidelines, and you can kind of avoid all the rules and not follow the rules, but at the same time you got to learn them and still follow them, and it starts to get really confusing really quickly. So is screenwriting hard? Yeah, screenwriting is hard. Is it as hard as writing other things? I think they're all equally hard. I've tried to write a novel. I'm not that good at it. I don't think that way. I've tried short stories, and it's hard for me because I like larger stories and more epic kind of stories. So it's hard for me to write in those forms. So for me, those are harder than screenwriting, yes. But that's because I like screenwriting. And sometimes if people are saying screenwriting is really easy, maybe it's because they just really like it or they prefer that kind of writing, because it is a very different kind of writing. Is it hard? Yes, it's hard, and don't let people tell you any different. Myth number 2 is that the better story always wins. Well, that's also not true. Let's say you have 2 scripts, okay? 2 scripts, and one of them is a better story than the other one. Maybe not by much, maybe just a little, but it's definitely better. And everybody that reads it says this story is better than this one. But this one gets made and this one doesn't. And people are like, well, why is that the case? Why does the not as good movie get made? Shouldn't you be trying to write a really great movie? Well, yeah, you should be trying to write a really great movie. But the thing is, there are more factors at stake with a screenplay. So you might write a screenplay and a specific actor who's got a development deal loves that script, loves that story. They've always wanted to play a character like this. And even though the story's not as good as this other one, they've always wanted to play this character. So this one's going to get made. Or a director has always wanted to direct a film like this. And so that film is the one that gets made. Or a producer really just falls in love with it and is a champion of it. And that's what we're going to do. So that's the story that gets made. Or a producer who's got a lot of money is like, I just want to pay money. I want to see that movie. I want to see it happen. So we're making it happen. There's a lot of reasons and a lot of factors at play. And in some ways, I'm kind of oversimplifying even just those 4 variables. But there's a lot of variables that come into play when it comes to screenplays. So does the better story always win? No, it doesn't. Should it? I don't know, maybe. But sometimes I really like these movies. I like watching these movies because they're fun, or because they're the genre that I like to watch, or this is the actor that I like to watch. Like I would rather watch this movie than this one, even though this one might be better. When you start thinking about better always wins, that's not always the case with screenplays. And if you're going to be a screenwriter, you've got to understand that better doesn't always win. And that's okay. Myth number 3 is that anyone can do it. And on one hand, this is kind of true, and on the other hand, it's really not. Not anyone can do it. It takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of time. It takes someone who's meticulous, It takes people who understand story. It takes people who understand characters and emotions. It takes a lot of skills that are coming to bear to write an excellent screenplay that other people can then take and go make into a movie. It takes a lot of work, and you have to be good at what you're doing. And you've got to love what you're doing. Because when you're rewriting your 120-page script for the 5th time, so you're about on page, just simple numbers like 600, and you're still hashing over things, that's hard. And not anybody has the patience to do that. Not anybody can do that. You've also got to have a pretty good grasp of the English language if you're going to write for Hollywood. And by a good grasp of the English language, I mean that you can speak it, that you can listen, that you have an ear for hearing the lyricality of dialogue, that you understand how people work and how to communicate that, how to communicate emotions, that you can write pretty well, that you have a pretty good sense of grammar. Like, those are things that you have to have. Those are skills that are necessary to be able to do it. Now, can you learn those things? Absolutely, you can learn those things. You can be a screenwriter if you really want to. Some people have natural talent. Some people have to work at it. And you can kind of think of it like professional athletes. There are some professional athletes that are just good at their sport. And some of them are just good at any sport. Just give them anything, like they can do anything. And others, they work and work and work and work, and they become excellent. So both paths are possible. Anybody can do it, but you still have to have the drive and the desire to want to do it. And not everybody has that. So can anybody be a screenwriter? Yes and no. Probably not. But if you want to, yeah, you can. Myth number 4. Hollywood is always looking for new stories. No, they're not. Hollywood doesn't really like new stories. And when we talk Hollywood, what I'm meaning are the larger studios that are here. They make the bigger movies, or they have more money and more weight to throw behind a movie. So if you're talking about just a different kind of movie, that's an independent film, more than likely. And you can make those. But is Hollywood looking for new stories? No. What Hollywood is looking for are new takes on familiar stories. That's what they want. Why? Because they know that in this genre, this number of people are going to go buy a ticket, or this number of people are going to stream it, or this number of people are going to buy it on DVD. They know if we do this, or if we put this actor in front of them, this is going to happen. So we are not looking for brand new things. We are a business. We want to make money. So we're going to do the things that we know work. Now, if it starts to work in another medium, like if a different idea starts working in an independent film, and there's a couple of independent films that start doing it, and they start finding some success, yeah, Hollywood is going to start adapting that. And that's why it's necessary for independent film and studios. Studios are a little more of a broader audience, so they can bring stories to more people, whereas independent films are a little more exploratory, and they can try new things and do new things and get away with new things that the big studios can't do. So if you have a different story, trying to market it to someone in Hollywood is not going to work. You need to try to do it through an independent route. If you have a new take on a familiar story, now that might be something that could be more Hollywood. But if you start thinking that Hollywood is looking for new ideas, or you'll see this like, why doesn't Hollywood put any new things out there? Well, because it's a business and they want to make money. So they're not going to put different things out there that are unproven. They're going to do new takes on familiar stories. Myth number 5. If you want to be a screenwriter, you have to be in LA. Well, that's just not true anymore. Now, maybe 20 years ago, that might have been really true. Like, you kind of got to be there. And to an extent, it's still very true for writing in television. If you want to write in television, you kind of have to be here. Now, with the pandemic and all the stuff that's happened in our world of late, that's changed some. Writers' rooms, some of them are going virtual. So maybe you don't necessarily need to be here, and maybe that will change over the next several years. Some people kind of think it might, at least for some shows, that it might change, where you don't necessarily have to be here. But for the most part, if you want to write in television, you kind of have to be out here. If you're not writing in television, you don't necessarily have to be out here, but you do have to be willing to come out here. So you have to be able to take some meetings and do that. That's an important part of being a screenwriter. But can you be a successful screenwriter and not live in LA? Absolutely. There are several people that do it. Now, what a lot of people will do is they'll be like, oh yeah, I'm a screenwriter, I don't live in LA. Well, but they were here initially, had some success, kind of got their foot in the door, and then they moved away. So you might have to think about being here for a time, but do you have to be here forever? Probably not, especially if you're writing feature films. And do you have to be here even to do feature films? No, not necessarily. You can probably do that from anywhere, especially given the nature of how our world is today. So do you have to be in LA? No, but you might still need to be able to be here if somebody needs you to be here. Okay, myth number 6 that we're going to deal with today. I have to write in FinalDraft. Well, this one's a little complicated. On one hand, the answer is no. You don't have to write in FinalDraft. You should be writing in some screenwriting software. Find some screenwriting software to write in. But generally, when you're starting out and when you're sharing scripts with people, you're sharing them as a PDF. So as long as whatever software you are comfortable using will generate a PDF, you're going to be fine. The only time it really starts to come into play is if you start to get into production. Then what you really want is you want some software that's at least compatible with FinalDraft, because somebody's going to want a FinalDraft copy of your script. Now, you could actually retype it into FinalDraft if you wanted to or whatever, and you're waiting because you're like, I don't have the money to spend on FinalDraft, so I'm just going to wait. Well, then wait. Wait till somebody pays you money for a script, use the money, go out and buy FinalDraft, retype your script. They'll take you a couple of days, redo it. It'll also help you find any other errors or whatever, and then send them a FinalDraft version of it. So you can totally do that. You can totally work around it. Do you have to write in FinalDraft? No, you don't. But you do need to be able to, at some point, be able to transfer it into a FinalDraft version. Initially, though, you just need a PDF. And so if you have a screenwriting software that can generate a PDF, you're going to be just fine. Hopefully this has been helpful to you. If it has, and if you found some value, please like, please subscribe. I do appreciate it. It helps other people find the channel. If you're going to tell a story, though, tell a story that matters. See you later.